Johnny, first of all, thanks very much for coming on to the show. Really do appreciate it. Obviously, we've been working together for a little while now, since about August or so, but the brand has grown so much in that time with Perfect YT. You're obviously, I guess we could say, CMO. I know you don't like officially call yourself that, but you head up all the marketing and that side of things, and you've been pushing the reason why the brand scaled so much online and in other channels. So yeah, very excited to chat about all that stuff today, and definitely hope the audience can learn a lot about how you've kind of been able to scale the brand like really, really far in the last couple of years. So yeah, thanks very much for coming on.
Got it. I think if you put CMO in all lower caps, that's probably an appropriate title.
The most on brand way of doing it. Yeah, the whole title here will be lowercase. But I suppose going into the like background first, we'll get into Perfect YT, like how you got into like Ecom and all that side of things. But you actually didn't. You got into it, I suppose, maybe like 2018, 2019. But you had an interesting path there where you've had a few full-fledged careers before you almost got into the ecom space. So what were you doing, I guess, before you got into all the ecom stuff?
First off, timeline. I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and my wife kind of was commenting on it. She's like, "I think you have the timeline wrong." So I definitely was like starting to read about ecom in 2018, 2019. I don't think I did anything really to do with executing until early 2020. But before that, and during that, actually, I was a fireman until 2022. Yeah, I left the New York City Fire Department in August of 2022. I was there from January of 2006 until August of 2022.
God damn, yeah. So 16 years in the fire department, then going into ecom's pretty interesting. But when you were in the early days of ecom, like how did that come about? Like when did you like start to become aware of it and say, okay, this is something actually I'm quite interested in. There's potential here, and in this sort of space. When did all that sort of come to be?
I've been involved around marketing a little bit. Like I had a business in the late 2000s that was an events business, so we marketed digitally. We used SEO, we used ads, Facebook ads, we used Google ads, Yelp ads. So I was in digital marketing somewhat, but not selling product. It was more like a business. And then I had a real estate company, and I used Facebook ads to grab tenants sometimes. So, I have a little bit of experience, but I wouldn't say it's enough experience to take my job now. Certainly, if they were operating at the level they are now, they would never hire somebody like me to do it.
Gotcha. Makes sense. So you were like before, was Perfect YT the first store you'd ever gotten involved in? Like, did you have other projects before where did you get started another way, or how did that all kick off?
So, no, the first store I worked on was American Mask Project, which was in March of 2020. It was a brand that launched, and I did Facebook and Google ads for them. They took off pretty quickly. We went from, not being a business, no website at all, to probably $120,000 a week in sales in about 30 days.
How did that happen? Like just through Facebook and Google, or what the hell? That's
Yeah,
crazy.
I was I got the website. It was a Shopify site. I was still very unfamiliar with Shopify at the point, and my wife had another website that I was looking at to work on, but I really hadn't done much with it. So she launched this other website and American Mass Project, and I opened up Business Manager because I had a business manager for my real estate business. I named myself as one of the people running the ad account, and I put like two or three ads up the first day, $50 a day, and maybe like in a day or two that we were up to like 250 a day, and then by the end of the week, I was, I was like $1,500 a day, whatever. Like it just went crazy. It was so the demand was so crazy that I just kept throwing money into ads, making new ads.
God damn, that is pretty wild amount of scaling. But like, wait, so you're going from $50 a day to like $150 a day or $250 a day, and then like scaling up slowly. I mean, like, did you like, how did you even know to do that at the time, where you're like, all right, I'm getting this return here, I think I can like make more ads and like kind of put more budget behind these, I think roughly these are what the ad should look like? Is You didn't exactly have all the experience in the world running ads before coming into that, but it's almost, I don't know, is it instincts in a sense, or do you kind of think, yeah, like what was that, or was it just kind of YOLO?
Uh, I can't, I wish I could. I don't have access to that business manager anymore. I wish I could pull some of those ads out. They were so terrible. It was just picture, I just take a picture and I'd be like, put something on the copy like grab yours today or something like that. Um, as far as how did I budget, I was going off of sales as I always do. So the way I looked at it, we were running a lot of traffic there anyway. Personally, I have a lot of connections. So I had sent hundreds of people to the website through my LinkedIn, through my Facebook account, through Instagram. I have a couple of thousand followers on Instagram at the time, my personal account for, I was like, I wouldn't say a real estate guru, but I was involved in real estate and a lot of my technique was kind of odd. So people followed me and I was just like, here, check out this new website, put it up there. And I would say a lot of the traffic came from my wife's friends, my friends, personal, acquaintances. And so what we did was if we had $1,000 worth of sales a day, which we did in the first, I think we did $7,000 in sales in one of the first 3 or 4 days. So I just said, hey, what should our budget be? We just did 7 grand in sales. What should our budget be on ads? And they were like 20%. Okay, cool. So that's how I got to, 1,500 bucks.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think were we like discussing this back in November or something like that, where even when you're looking at Facebook or whatever, there's almost this like cross attribution where like a lot of, especially when you're a bit bigger as a brand, there's like a lot of people are just talking to their friends, and like they'll like, let's say talk about like they have like they enjoy the products or whatever it is, and then let's say that person who they've spoken to is then shown an ad and then they may purchase, and it looks as though, let's say that'll be a sale like directly through Facebook. I believe it was you I was chatting to about this, and where you're kind of like there where you already had this like a bit of organic, I know, just like from your own personal, but it's kind of funny with that like attribution, I suppose, where it could just there's often that like human element that like doesn't obviously get shown in an ads manager.
Yeah, I don't really trust a lot in attribution. So I pretty, I heard somebody talking about this recently, and he pays attention to attribution. So he was like, look at, he looks at Northbeam, and he's like, yeah, I can track all these different sales. But, and I'm not that genius at this stuff, but my understanding is that Facebook is not capturing, or Northbeam, whoever it is, Triple Whale, they're not capturing all the sales. So there's some portion of the sales that are not getting through. So once something is not exact, I don't really want to be making decisions on it. So what I try to do is we don't really run direct response ads. Like none of our ads say you must buy now, come to the website and shop immediately. Our ads are kind of like branding ads, and they get to people over time. So I guess if I was selling drop ship stuff off of Alibaba, or the kind of things that a lot of people are selling out there, I would need to have attribution and I would be watching ROAS. But for us, it's not so important.
Gotcha. Yeah. Where did you go from there, from the scaling? Like, I mean, did you run into to other issues? Were you able to continuously scale on the ads? Like what happened from that point?
So my Facebook ads manager kept getting suspensions because I don't I read the terms of service, but I didn't really understand everything. There's a lot of little boxes in Facebook that you got to pay attention to, and I was just like, whatever, run this ad. Um, so I definitely didn't know what I was doing too well, but I didn't really have a choice. They needed somebody to do it, and I quickly moved to Google Ads because I did know a little bit about Google Ads as well. So if I had trouble at Facebook, I would just start spending money on Google, and then I would try to unravel what was going on Facebook with suspensions and ads getting denied. The wording that I was using they didn't like. So I think I had a picture of a kid, one of our kids. It was in the ad, and Facebook didn't like it. I didn't realize that that was against TOS, and you couldn't see the kid's face. It was just like kind of like that kind of look. So, but they didn't like it. They were like, "That's a kid." They knew, so they gave us I don't know if it was an ad suspension or account suspension. So that was something I didn't know. You learn all these things in the beginning. And I went to Google Ads, and so I started running Google Ads, and that was something I would say, not better experienced at, but I would say once people are searching for you, Googling, Google Ads a really good platform as well.
So like your was there a point there where you kind of clocked that you were, I don't know, either you liked it a lot or you were kind of good at that side of things, or do you know, yeah, I'm interested here. Like you scale up the ads budget pretty quickly, and now it's kind of a lot of your forte is you were like managing like all the marketing, various marketing departments for a very successful brand, of course, at this stage. Did you think, oh, this is pretty enjoyable, this is pretty interesting, I actually like doing this, or was it, I don't know, is it a bit of a different angle on things?
It can be stressful, but I like, I would say I don't gamble, but I love to gamble. So specifically don't gamble, but gambling is fun. And I think Facebook ads is a little bit of gambling. You throw some money up and you're like, you start to see a return on investment. And you could have a website that's a week or two old that never had any sales, and all of a sudden it's doing a couple of grand a day. And it interests me. I think it would interest a lot of people.
Do you ever wonder how many millionaires Mark Zuckerberg has made? If you think about just like normal person just learns how to run ads, and it's like,
Yeah, he's like he's made the level playing ground where like I have eighth grade education. The last grade that I completed was the eighth. I didn't go to college, and I didn't work in an agency to learn ads. There's all these media buyers out there who have high levels of education and they've run millions and millions of dollars worth of ad spend. But I could go from zero to $100,000 in sales in a month just watching a few videos on YouTube. And then 3 years later, I could be spending $500,000 a month on Facebook. And it's kind of a level playing field. And I have conversations with people all the time who are way smarter than me, especially on Twitter. And I'm still here. I'm still doing this stuff. So to me, it's he's amazing because he's leveled the playing field. I really respect what he's done.
100%. And there was kind of, I would say, bearish sentiment, I'd say, like towards the platform maybe 2022 maybe or so, and then like now they've kind of
Yeah.
just come out of that, where I think people have like learned how to work around things if they've like solid fundamentals as a company. And now it's kind of, you see people who are like Zuck maximalists again on Twitter, like never fade brother Zucks and all this kind of thing, and it's definitely seems to be true. It's like have you ever heard of the Lindy Effect? So
No,
it base
what's that?
so the Lindy Effect is basically, there was this cafe, kind of like a diner cafe in New York, which served, I would say, presumably normal enough cheesecake, after, in kind of the Broadway or so, like somewhere around there where like they put on the musicals. And the staff in Lindy was the name of the restaurant. Um, they basically found that like the longer a show was going on, so the longer the singers and actors who were in that musical kept coming into the diner, the longer they would forecast that they would keep coming to the diner, i.e. the longer the show had run for, the longer they thought it would run for. So like, let's say if the actresses and actors were coming in for 14 days, they would forecast them to come for another 14 days, and that's when the show would peter out and no one would keep coming. And so the example is basically, in something that isn't perishable, that's more idea based, the longer it goes on, the more it actually like proves its fitness in a Darwinian sense, and can continue to run on. So it's like if you were to say, okay, let's say a New York Times best-selling book today, do you think that will outlast this book that was published 2,000 years ago? Your gut reaction would say, yeah, I would say it would. Then if I said, well, what if that book was called the Bible, the 2,000-year-old one? Do you
Yeah.
think the bestseller will outlive the Bible? You'd say, no, I don't think it will. It's almost with Facebook, when TikTok came along, it was sort of like, oh, TikTok's going to be like the kind of next thing. But now Facebook is it's Lindy. It's just like, no, it's kind of kept going for a while. I'm pretty certain it will continue to go for. It will continue to be the mother, the father, and the whole family, really.
Yeah. If only I could have back the time that I wasted on those ad platforms like TikTok and Pinterest. I'm trying to remember if I did any other ones. If
So
only I could have back that time and devote it to Facebook.
do you view things that way? Like, as in with your channels, do you just view, okay, like your main marketing channels are going to be like Facebook, Instagram, very good word of mouth, and emails, pretty much, or like do you view other things that fit into the puzzle? Like, what do you think you should keep it simple, for a really long period of time, and just focus on really doing less but doing it way better?
I don't know if you follow the guy from Ridge, Sean,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
Occasionally, to paraphrase him, he'll be like, if you're doing less than 300 million, you don't need to do anything except Facebook. That's not exactly what he says, but maybe it's 100 million or 200 million, whatever he says. But he says something along those lines. I used to listen to him and I'd be like, what is he talking about, that guy? But now I realize he's so right. I'm like, man, I wish I would have listened to that dude. Like I was trying to master Pinterest, Facebook, Google, all these different ad platforms. If you focus in on one and just go like a mile deep on that one ad platform, if you feel like doing another one, you could, but give somebody else that job. Don't do it yourself. Don't manage it yourself because the harder you go into one platform, the better off you are.
What else have you tried? Then you mentioned Pinterest there. Have you dabbled much with TikTok? What do you think of other
Yeah.
platforms that you've worked on?
I'm sure a lot of people have success on TikTok. I did not. Um, just, I would say it's great for the people who like it, but we're a Facebook, Instagram brand. It seems like the brand, the brand loves Facebook and Instagram, and we just flourish on it. We do well on Google as well. But I've always liked Google Ads. I think it goes hand in hand as a retargeting, basically, or a brand search tool. I don't think it's demand creation. Like Facebook is so great at demand creation. I think Google's more like somebody saw our shirt on their friend and they're like, oh, yeah, let me Google that brand. That's what happens.
Gotcha. So going back to American Mass for a second, because I actually didn't know that this is something you were working on as well before Perfect White Tea. I for some reason I thought it almost was that PWT was like the first brand in a sense, but
Yeah.
it was because it's
There was another one too. I worked on another brand before Perfect White Tea.
what happened with these projects? Like, did you continue to like you said with American Mass, like within what 30 days you're doing like 100 grand a week nearly in sales, like
Yeah.
that? What were you thinking at that time, right? So like you scale that quickly, you're like, what the hell is going on here? This is bonkers.
Yeah, maybe quit my job because I didn't have enough time. I was driving around. I was the sole person working on that brand, and it was doing hundreds of thousands a month in a very short period of time. But nobody else was working on it. Like no emails, no marketing people, no freelancers, nothing. Just me running Google ads and Facebook ads. So I was, and I was working full time as a fireman. After a couple of months, all the people involved wanted to get away from it and get back to what they had been doing, working on their clothing brands, working on whatever it was they were doing. So that brand they just basically shuttered it, just walked away. I think one month it was doing 80 or 100 grand a month, and the next month it did like 20. And then the following month after that, they pulled the plug on the subscription to Shopify. But there was another brand. My wife has a store in New York, and she doesn't own it anymore. It's called Shopbotto. Used to be like used to be three. There's three of them now. So when she owned those stores, they were connected to a Shopify store as a general store, and there might be like 10,000 SKUs in there. So I was working on getting that store to perform on Shopify. So we took the store, put it on Shopify, worked on the email marketing, worked on the Facebook marketing, worked on Google, basically the same stuff I had done uh, with American Mass Project, and it was much slower going. So a year in, it was doing like 10,000 a month. Had a lot of products. It taught me a lesson. You shouldn't sell other people's stuff.
So more so from, would you say that more so from like a gross margin perspective, or would you say it from almost the like just logistics of dealing with that side of things, where people are just giving ag essentially?
When you have something that other people have access to, it's not your brand, you're going to compete on a couple of levels. You can either compete on price, which is nobody wants to compete on price, or you can compete on service or creative, but you don't hold all the cards. When you have a brand, you hold all the cards. You set the price. There's brand loyalty. So I would stay away from general stores. It's good to get practice. It's good to get the practice at the technical aspects of marketing, setting up a Facebook account, running ads, creating ads, looking at metrics, being in if you're doing conversion rate optimization, it's good for that. It's good for the idea that you're going to create email marketing and the strategy and the different executing of creating flows and coming up with this is how we're going to sell people. But as soon as you can get your own brand, that's what you should do.
Was that then? So you learned that lesson. Did PWT come along pretty quickly after that other brand? Then like when did that start to take over?
It was all at the same time. It was going like it was like running into each other. So Botto went online um, for online sales in the spring of 2020, and Perfect White Tea went online for sales in the summer of 2020, July of 2020.
Good timing.
And yeah, so it was like all at the same time. I had three websites, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to work on each one of them. So I would just do whatever needed to be done on any of them that I could. But quickly, Perfect White Tea became such a big deal that they gave it to an agency to do most of the work on. And it was taken away from me. And they were like, okay, you stay over there and work on those two stores, and we're going to have the professionals work on Perfect White Tea. So they did that for a little while. And I did a little bit of engagement on Instagram. Like I was following people, commenting on posts. That was my primary job. And then I was running ads for the other two brands.
Gotcha. And then how long did that go on for? Where you weren't you didn't take over the marketing for PWT, but it was becoming this big deal. At some point did you like? Was there a thought where you could do the marketing better, or was there some event where you were like, okay, this is going well, but there is points of leverage here, here, and here.
My opportunity came with iOS 14 and a half. So nobody, I would say in their right mind, like this brand went from zero to 50,000 to 100,000 a month in a short period of time. It wasn't even 6 months old. They were doing 100 a month. So who's going to stop that, take it from an agency and then give it to this guy? Nobody. So they just kept going, and it was doing really well. And then iOS 14 and a half came around, and the agency was struggling. And so that gave me an opportunity to get in and look at what they were doing, do audits. I brought in some professionals to do audits because uh, I'm not really an expert on any phase of marketing. I'm more of a generalist. I would say, especially at that point, I wasn't that expert at anything. So I had everything audited. And when the audits came back, I laid it out in front of my wife and her partner and was like, hey, this is what's going on. Let's fix it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, for you, like, did you struggle on the other two brands with when iOS 14 happened, or were you able to like switch tack pretty quickly? Like, how did that pan out for you?
I would say that one brand was already out of business. The second one, we were focusing on Google ads. Facebook wasn't very good to shop Botto. We were mostly focused on shopping ads, Google Merchant Center, and so it didn't really affect me as much.
Gotcha. So when you came in there, right? So when iOS 14 happens and like that changes the strategy on basically all of Facebook. When you got the expert help in, like, was it still there's still like a difficult transitory period of, okay, we're gonna have to massively change the strategy here based on we don't have like the targeting that we used to have. We don't have. I actually remember. I think it was like Nick Shackelford. I heard like tell a story of back when he was media buying for Apple in like 2011 or something crazy. And I think Facebook ads only came out in like 2007 or 2009, something like that. Um, but he was saying you could literally target someone based on like their age, their race, their gender,
Oh
their
yeah.
roughly their income level, like the exact neighborhood they were in. He was like, yeah, it should have been illegal. Versus now, obviously, like that got progressively, that got nerfed a wee bit as well. So like, you couldn't exactly do that in 2020. But then what was it, like March or April 2021? iOS 14 happened March or April, I think, one of those two. Um,
I
yeah,
think by May it was really affecting people, and people started to notice it. Maybe their email lists were covering them for a month or two because the email marketing would scrape up enough revenues that people might not notice that their ads weren't performing. For us, it was during the summer of 2021 that it started to be apparent. And by the fall, we were very aware of it, working on it. We were at a full service agency. That's one thing I would say is unless you're a massive corporation and you got a lot of money, I would just stay away from full service agencies. That's not My personal opinion is I don't know of a single full service agency I would recommend to a small brand under like 10 million in revenues a year.
Damn.
I've done three full service agencies at this point, retainers up to like 50, say 25, 30 grand a month. And I wouldn't recommend to anybody to do a full service agency. That's just my personal opinion.
Crazy. So what were you guys able to change? From like the what was it, the kind of fall ish of 2021? When did you kind of start to figure it out more? Was that a combination of you, maybe someone intelligent as well you brought in who knew what they were looking at throughout the course of 2021? Like what was everyone doing? Someone else intelligent. I mean, was what I was getting at there, Johnny. But yeah,
Most of it came off of Fiverr. So I hired a Facebook guy off of Fiverr, freelancer, $100 a week. He was running Facebook ads. I was feeding him the content. Sam Baldwin, who runs Google Ads, he's a big YouTube guy. He has all kinds of tutorials on how to run ads, Google Ads. So I hired him as a agency. He has an agency called eCommerce. He ran Google Ads. And email marketing, I got a guy off of Fiverr, Ask Timmy. Um, we were doing at the time $2,000 a month, I think in September of 2020 in email marketing. Where our revenues were under 100, but right at 100. And we were doing like 2,000 a month. We had a $6,000 a month one month on Clavio. So I got this guy, Timmy from Fiverr, and we did maybe like, I don't know, 30, maybe 50 that month in email revenue. The next month was Black Friday, November, we did 100. The following month, we did almost 100 again off email. So ever after that, we were always a six-figure brand.
god damn, yeah, and that's did that fully fix the Facebook stuff, or were you tweaking a lot of stuff as well on that front, like marketing wise, like always on the front end? You were saying you were feeding content. Were you ramping up how much content you guys were making for the ads as well, or yeah?
Yeah, we started giving them more ads and better ads. And then I actually got another guy to do Facebook ads that was in Europe for a little while. He was pretty good, Luca. Um, he ran them for a bit, and then I switched to a United States agency for a little while, full service agency, and then I switched to another full service United States agency, and then I went back to just a specific like nowadays I always just look for an expert who goes deep in on it and doesn't do full service. I only look for people who are just experts at one thing, and then I oversee the rest of it.
Gotcha. Dead on. Dead on. Yeah. I mean, from there, yeah, that sounds like Conor Gallagher. I definitely wouldn't be an expert in anything, but Conor Gallagher definitely would certainly be an expert in email apparently. But yeah, would you say there were any like inflection points for you guys like from that point? So you've kicked on from there multiple times, right? Like there have been, I mean, like speaking for one of our brands, like they were at kind of like 300K a month level for a long period of time. And for them, it was like with one of their products, they found like these couple of ad angles that were like working ridiculously well for it. And they were able to like scale to like 1.2 million in like 5 months after that. Like when they were stuck at 300K for maybe 2 years ish.
Yeah,
So like
that's good.
it's fun. It's funny though, isn't it? Like they say, like things come in terms of unlocks and inflection points. It's like you're stuck somewhere for ages, and it feels like most of the effort is wasted. But it's like you put in the effort to have the realization. It's not like you're putting in the effort and getting like consistent gains after a while. It's like you put in the effort to be stuck in a plateau, and then one inflection point happens, and you fly off of there. I mean, it would you say that was like a similar thing for you guys going into like 2022? That would have been at the time. How did that
Yeah,
go?
the big key I would say overall is I would find somebody who's way ahead of you down the road to try to talk to that person or a group of people way down the road. Like you're doing 50 grand a month, find some guy who's doing 750 a month, and then have that person, man, woman, whatever it is, as your North Star going back and saying, what should we do? Because there's usually three areas that I look at. I look at CRO, email, and ads. Those are the three. So if I want to move up from where I am right now, it's one of three ways. I'm going to make the website convert more. I'm going to grab more revenues from email, or I'm going to drive more revenues with ads. And it's very hard to just say, okay, I'm going to throw more money at ads. I'm just going to raise my bids, but that'll work for a little while. It just runs out of steam. So then you have to find new angles. What I would say is I would look for somebody who's been there before. The biggest unlock for me was finding people who were bigger than us to just tell me what to focus on. And if I could pass along something to some people who are struggling right now, I would say go ask people who are much bigger than you what they did to get where they are, and then also uh, focus all of your energy on one thing personally and find experts to do the other things that you can do.
Yeah. It's funny there as well. I think in a lot of businesses, like even for an agency like I would run, like there's like a narrow Overton window almost of like things that work, in a sense of like if you're, it's like just posting what you're doing on the internet, like not even like highly technical stuff, but just like a documentation, like here's what we're doing for our brands, like just like dropping it there. Like if like maybe someone will find it valuable, that works on the internet, like on Twitter, that
Yeah.
works. That's how we met, of course. On like some outbound works, like cold email can work, but like let's say doing like kind of convoluted like community funnels and things like that, like people want to do, doesn't really work. It's like there's almost this core, like they're like a core slew of things where if you just focused on them and got really good at them, you would have way better results. Like there are some people where, you know, they, like Sean Frank was saying, I'm sure he's being a bit facetious when he's saying like just to get to 100 million you just need to do this. Like largely what he's saying is
Yeah.
true, and he's
True.
and he's
Yeah.
he gives some crazy good advice. But it's so funny for, I know he's arguably at the highest level of guy on Twitter, right? Like arguably, and he what he posts is like the most route one kind of advice, I would call it. Right, just do this.
Yeah. Yeah. I like him. I like all those founder guys. The Operators podcast. All those guys are great. I listen to all of them. That's a new thing for me. I've always seen them around. I followed all of them for a little while, but I really didn't pay too close of attention to what they were doing, and I wish I had sooner because they definitely unlocked for me the ability to scale up a little quicker. There's some stuff that they just talk about. I'm trying to think of one specific thing, but it's hard to pull something out. But I always listen to them when I'm driving. And then one day I was like, man, I got to listen to these guys. And I'm just sitting here doing nothing. So I pulled out a pad and a paper, pen, and I played one of their episodes while I was sitting here. And then I wrote a bunch of stuff down and I put it on an Excel spreadsheet. And then I started carrying it out. I was like, whoa, this is great. So I passed it along. I'm in a private group of ecom owners. There's a couple of us in there, mostly 7 and 8 figure stores. We talk to each other about what we're doing. And so I passed it along to everybody else. And some of the guys are like, yeah, of course I'm doing that. Are you kidding? So it's good to have people in your group.
Completely
You
agree.
help them, they can help you.
Completely agree. Yeah. Did you find them at that time, like end of 2021, early 2022, or was it later on when you started to pay attention, and then as a result, did certain inflection points come later? Or
No, I found those guys in the fall of 23.
oh god, right?
I was on, Cody Flocker helped me out a lot, like last year and the year before, I think, like 23 and part of 22. I was listening to him a lot. Reddit, I can't name any of these people because they're all anonymous, but Reddit was very good to me for all of 2020, 2021, and part of 2022. And some Facebook groups. I'm in like Charlie T's Facebook group. I'm in Constantine Dugaris. He's got like a really Greek name. I can't remember. Facebook Ads Master. So there's a lot of Facebook groups, and I spent a lot of time in those different groups with trying to solve problems, just move the ball forward a little bit. And I think it's usually a combination of trying to execute, running up against the wall, take a couple of steps back, try to figure out how to get past that wall, talk to other people who have gotten past the wall, and then you give it a try again. You got to execute though. You got to be banging your head up against that wall to know when somebody is telling the truth or they're full of it. Because there's a lot of people out there just want to collect your money, sell you a course, or get you on retainer, and they don't know. That's why I think it's very important to go deep on one particular topic.
Yeah,
Like say Facebook ads is a good one to go deep on because it's kind of easy to learn.
I think you'll like this one. Nassim Taleb says it is easier to macro bullshit than to micro bullshit. So so
Yeah, yeah, that's true. He's got that one right.
that's some that to me is like some New
Yeah.
York wise guy kind of wisdom. You know, like if you're talking about things in like convoluted terms, or like very just speaking very broadly, never specifics, it's like very easy to bullshit that way. But like, let's say if you're going into like exact flow structure, exact post purchase flow structure for a fashion brand and what they should do, it's very hard to bullshit on that, if you get me, because you're going into something very granular, and it's like it'd want to make logical sense, and you would want to have lots of receipts of like how you've done this in the past to like show why it's that it succeeded, and then why it succeeded, and actually like draw some causality, hopefully. But if it's just airy fairy, very easy to kind of bullshit there. But great saying that I really like. So what did you when did the like for because I'm just trying to get like timelines right in my head. So was it 2022 where you were like, okay, we've got something that's very strong here that could be like a really really good brand. Obviously for you guys as well, it's it's so broadly appealing. Like the products have such broad appeal where like that kind of total addressable market's quite large, so it's kind of it's interesting in that regard. What was there a point where you kind of knew what you had in your hands? You're like, this could be this. We're going very well here. This is a really sick brand, and we can push on more. Was that 22? Was it 23? Was it? I don't know.
Well, my wife and her partner have done this many times before. They've owned brands. Well, my wife didn't. She only owned one brand, but her partner owned another a brand, and she brought that brand from like 500 grand to 20 million. My wife has worked for a lot of brands that she brought from 100, 500 to 20, 50 million. She was like national sales manager for a couple of brands that went to like 50 million. She worked for Latigra. She worked for Rockaware. So she's worked on a lot of big brands. So it's for them. This is like what they do is like ABCs. They just know what they're doing, so they just do it the way they've always known. They weren't DTC people though. So for the DTC side of things, it was tough for them to find their way. They were relying upon the goodwill of agencies. So they would just hire an agency and be like, take care of the whole thing. And I was kind of, at the point where I was going to retire from the fire department. I was getting too old to be getting up in the middle of the night 20 times, running around with heavy stuff on my shoulders. I was getting beat up. So I was like very interested in what they were doing. And once iOS 14 came out, it gave me that opportunity to jump in. So I would say to anybody, just look for an opportunity. Like, for instance, in your business next week, what do they call that thing? DMARC?
Oh
DMARC is
yeah,
happening.
yeah,
Yeah, so if you're an expert on DMARC and next week some brand opens up their Shopify and they're like, wow, revenues are down, that's a huge opportunity.
100%. Luckily, that's been
Yeah.
sorted for a little while there. We kind of got out the jump on that one. I think that's actually, it might be 2 weeks. I think it's in February, or no, 1st of Feb, right? So yeah, about 9 days or so. But
9 days.
yeah,
Revenues, boom.
thankfully we got that
Revenues, DMARC.
branded sending domain. Everyone listening, got to get on that. But yeah, so okay, so you hopped in on that. So then how did the growth path go from there? I mean, it seemed like 23, and then I think You're Just Gone was probably the like real point where the brand just started to really boot off on D2C more than anything.
20, I mean, every year, 20, they had 300% growth year over year, every year. Um, Plus, I mean, the first year they had like 600%, the second year is 400, the third year, 250. This past year was 350. So every year is just, you got to learn something new. You got to grow, try to figure out the way forward. I would say, it's just always constant problems. If you start selling a lot more than you sold last month, and if you sold 3 times what you sold this time last year, there's going to be issues all over the place.
Yeah, sounds nice. I was chatting to one of our clients who's like UK based brand based up in Northern Ireland, and he's even just gone on about like they've rapid growth in like 2020, like going into like Black Friday. And he was like, bro, it's the little things you don't see, where like they 7x'd their September in the November. He was like, bro, it's even the little things. It's like you have to buy, because they fulfill in-house as well. They run a 3PL too.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, it's even like the racking space that you have to buy. It's all these even just benches and different machines or whatever that you need to buy." He's like, it looks phenomenal. He's like, but then there are all these other things that I'm having to do in the back end where I'm like, whatever. And then also because he's in the UK, it's like the VAT bill is higher, so it's like there's 20% just of a haircut gone. So like, let's say you get that revenue at during a sale, but you're still paying 20% on that, even like when the margin is lower on the actual product. So like, if you were to just
That's tough.
yeah, I mean, for argument's sake, if you were to do £1,000,000 there, and let's say your net margin goes down sufficiently, it's like you're still paying 200 grand on that to the UK government, like no matter what. So
Wow, that's crazy.
it is crazy, but then there are things you can claim back against it. Like there's certain expenditure. Let's say you can say, okay, that should be VAT deductible and things like that. But still, yeah, you're probably looking at like net 12 or 15% on that. That's just gone.
I can tell you one thing. If you go 7x, you're going to get some customer service inquiries too. Customer service is going to be working.
Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah, a lot of people are gonna need to be hired there as well. Like on the customer service side, that's no picnic. So for you guys, production wise, I know this, like you head up the marketing, CMO, all lowercase, of course. With their with the production, it's like all the stuff's made in the US, which is interesting. Same with our co-friend who also runs a brand, our friend in Connecticut, who's also manufacturing his stuff in America too. I mean, for production wise, does that, I suppose lead times would surely be better, but it's probably, I'm sure it brings its own stressors with scaling up the front end like that, because you're what's that experience like with creating stuff in the US when you're scaling that hard?
It's tough for me to talk about it because I'm not involved in it, but I see the results of it. So for instance, if I have some bestseller ad and it causes us to sell out of something, like say this hoodie, if we're going to sell out of this hoodie, if you have a t-shirt, it's kind of easy to be like, okay, let's throw that t-shirt on the line and get it out. I'm not involved in this, but I hear those conversations. But when you have something like this, a little more complicated, it's going to push those timelines out. So I would say those guys who are doing imports, say they're doing imports in like China or Vietnam, it's a lot easier for them to just say, we want 10 times the units because they're set up for that. In the United States, when you do that, it's a little tougher. It's a little bit of a different ball game. But the difference is that we're here, so we get to see stuff quickly. Like, if we have a fabric, we cut the fabric, we send it into the factory, and a couple of days later it comes back. We might not be able to produce thousands of them that quickly, but we can see one very quickly. Whereas with them, they have to overnight it. It takes 7 days maybe to overnight, or not overnight, but they have to ship it by air. Might take 7 days to get here. Maybe those guys are doing that quicker these days, but it's a lot easier to get stuff turned around here in the US.
Yeah, I think there you're kind of, it's a tough. I think that is a tough game if you're bulk buying just so much stock. In a sense where, like, let's say if your lead time from China is 6 weeks or something like that, and let's say if you're putting in an order of like 10,000 units, and like depending on the payment terms that you get for it, it's like it's a huge cash outlay, even like cash flow wise, from like when you actually purchase the stock to when you can sell it. It's like 6 weeks. Even if you get like, I don't know, like half up front, half after, like net 30 or something like that, it's still difficult because there's like 4 weeks of the 6 weeks gone there on the front end anyway. So like there's still a 2 week lead time of when you've actually laid out the cash versus when you're able to sell it. So it's significant still. If at a high volume of stock, that is still quite significant when you think about it. No one thinks like that.
The trade-off is they get that margin. Their margins are sick, Their margins are so crazy that it pays for all that time. Time is money, so they're able to buy a little bit of that time back because they're making so much money on margin.
Have you ever thought of a hybrid setup where you have some US for the core products? Have you ever, would you ever debate that for, I know, certain products where you think, I know we could get that made in, I mean, even Portugal, like for what you're wearing there, like Portugal is like famous for its jersey production. Like any sort of sweatshirt kind of fabric, they're like apparently one, like that operators group chat, the famous group chat, there's like a famous row of factories in Porto, which is Portugal's second city.
Yeah.
And
I've been to Porto. It's beautiful. I love it there.
gorgeous. Yeah, but have you
Yeah.
debated, like, have you looked around the world and thought, okay, like maybe this place is very good at jersey production, this place is very good at this kind of fabric production, or
I think if they were going to have that conversation, I probably wouldn't be in the room. They're like, I, I would, me personally, I don't see anything wrong with wherever you're going to produce as long as the quality is really high. But I think that because my wife does what she does for so long, and there's brands who have moved out of the U.S. production and they get a kick in the teeth for it because the quality goes down or they're not able. Like for instance, right now, the last thing in the world I would want to do is get something from the Far East. All those brands are getting a kick in the teeth with this Red Sea thing.
mm,
I think they're adding like 20 or 30 days to their shipments, and they're adding substantial cost to the ship price. So if you were going to look at something like that, I think you probably want to look at waiting a little while until the world settles down.
yeah, no, definitely, definitely.
I posted yesterday on Twitter that here's to all the USA companies, our supply chain, our made in USA. Here's to all the made in USA companies. Our supply chain is wide and made of asphalt. It's short, wide, and made of asphalt.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah. I think I saw that. Was it that like Suez container? Like you remember the ship that was like parked sideways and like literally blocked the Suez Canal?
Oh, I posted a picture of a shipping container that was like about to tip over and it was sending some containers into the water.
Oh yes, that was it. I think I just saw that today, maybe this morning or so. But on that, so you would had previous advice of like different ad platforms, different, do this, do that, do the other thing. We actually talked a little bit before this of advice, like different like myths or advice that you've seen, that you would see now or that you've seen in the past, that you maybe wouldn't agree with for growing a brand, for whether it's like dealing with people or whatever it is. I think you'd seen a bit of an egregious one today, perhaps. Maybe you don't want to share that one, but what kind of dreadful had, or not dreadful, but what kind of odd, let's say, advice have you received in the past where you look back and think, what the hell was that person suggesting to me?
So there's a community on the internet called the Fast Lane Forum.
Is that MJ DeMarco's thing?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So I've been on there for like I would say probably more than 10 years. And I read his book years ago. He's great. I love that guy. So they have this thing called, it's a process, a brain process. It's called action faking. Action faking. And the idea is that you're taking actions, but it's fake. So this would be like going into GoDaddy and taking down 10 domain names and stuffing them in the closet and being like, yeah, I'm going to open these up one day. It's okay if you get one and then the next day you get it open, you start like pecking away and you're putting up content. But when you get 10 of them, it's like, come on, dude, get real. So there are certain things that you do in marketing that might have a return in the beginning. Like, you go into Reddit, you start reading and you learn the first day, you learn 100% more today than you knew yesterday. And the second day you learn like 90. By day 10, what are you learning? Nothing. So now you have to take that knowledge and go execute it. So what I try to do is I try to figure out where you go off the deep end with learning stuff as opposed to executing. One of the things that I would get tied up in is like looking at the numbers. Like I'm checking out the traffic, looking at the traffic to see how the traffic is, looking at the conversion ratio, see how the conversion ratio is. You could do that, put a report up together, try to figure it out. Once you start to do that all the time, you're just looking at it, you're not really doing anything. You got to do stuff. So to me, I would say my recommendation to people would be aware of the human trait towards inaction and don't distract yourself with inaction, building dashboards, building reports, doing all these things. That, at some point, there's a little bit of return in the beginning, but it's just like going into the ocean. The first few feet, you're getting feet wet. Next thing you know, you're overhead. You're getting nothing done. Go back to the shore and get some work done. So to me, what I would say is don't, what they call from MJ DeMarco's website, don't action fake.
Yeah, that me from the early days feels personally attacked hearing that because I used to do so much action faking. I remember doing I don't know, like doing like making this like really extensive website like for the agency right in the beginning, which just wasn't like something
That's
basic,
good.
but something only we only needed something basic, and then like doing a really advanced like this really advanced reporting dashboard in Google Data Studio, none of which we wound up using because at that point I didn't even know what clients needed yet. You know what I mean? So it was like things like that where it's actually just avoiding the thing that you don't want to do, which at that point you need to find people to pay you for your goods or your services. That's
Yeah.
the beginning. You just need to get to a minimum viable level where you can do that. Would you on ecom advice, have you had anything where you look back and think, man, that was that that maybe that wasn't great advice? Was it anything particular that jumps out to you where you're like, I would not advise someone earlier on to follow that?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember who said it a couple weeks ago, but somebody was, it might have been, it's one of those big guys in Facebook ads, Nick Shackelford or Taylor Holiday, said like less than, it sucks that I can't remember which one it is, but I'm old, senile. Said if you're doing less than like 3 million a year, you should be doing your own Facebook ads.
Taylor Holiday said that.
He did. Okay, thank you. So I 100% agree with him. I've what I would call out is that if you go to Reddit or if you go to Twitter, sometimes some agency guy will be like, "Don't waste your money. Get an agency in here right away." I've dealt with some agency guys who are getting paid six figures a year, who I know more about ads than they do. Like they were handling our account. We're paying them $5,000, $7,000 a month to do, Facebook ads for us. And I would be on phone conversations, video calls, and the guy doesn't know what he's doing. And I'm like, holy cow, how are you? How did you get that job? So I would agree with Nick Shackelford, and I would say, don't take anybody's word for it. Learn stuff.
Mm,
Don't don't take anybody's word that this is, this area over here, Facebook ads is so deep. Nobody could know this as well as the professionals. Anybody can learn it.
sure.
So bad advice would be always hire the highest professional you can. And another bad piece of advice I've heard is that don't ever hire anybody off of Fiverr. I've hired a lot of people off of Fiverr. They're working people too. They do work.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I think on the agency one is an interesting one. Obviously, I'm going to be somewhat biased here because I run an email SMS agency there. But I feel like if you'd ask like 10 different people what their conception of an agency is, you'll get 10 different answers. Like as in, let's say if you're even like the like fees some people talk about, I'm like, man, like we're like basically Fiverr people compared to some of these people. So like in some respects, or then I'm also like, I think I saw someone like that, one of those leaders saying, he said it was someone like a Taylor Holiday or a Nick Shackelford, but he's saying November is make or break time for brands, December is make or break time for agencies, lots of renewal conversations going on. And I was like, right, so reading between the lines, you mean 12-month contracts? I was like, that's like foreign to because I didn't work, like I didn't come from like that background of like doing 12-month
Yeah.
contracts and like enormous fees and stuff like that. So then I'm like, shit, when I say I run an agency, do people think that's what we do? Like it's in bigger brand owners, let's say you have that experience. And I'm like, that's just it's a they're like different worlds. You realize people just occupy different echo chambers and like that's what they think to be true. When they're like you were saying, there are other pockets out there of people who are very good at what they do. They could be on Fiverr, they could be on here, they could be on wherever. Um, it's different echo chambers.
In my experience, fees that are charged by agencies do not reflect their experience and expertise sometimes. As far as like you could pay somebody $7,000, $8,000 a month to do Facebook ads, say, and you might get that same service from a guy on Fiverr who charges $100 a week.
Crazy.
That I've seen. That's just one example. I've seen it. Agency, everybody would know the name of it, but my Fiverr guy was right here with them. I'm not saying that they weren't good. They did a good job, but he did a good job too.
100%.
So I'd rather pay him $400 a week. Take
100%.
the
Yeah.
six, take the 6,000 and go away for a few days.
Head away to I don't know, head away to the Bahamas there. A short flight for you. Um, but yeah, what's the plan for 2024? So as we record this, it's January 2024. You did a huge 2023. There's lots of a lot of growth, like on all fronts. Like the brand's in a very good position. Do you maybe you don't want to be too specific with targets, but I know like you do enjoy setting your targets. You also have a bit of a clairvoyant ability to kind of predict your sales for like the year right in the very beginning. So I think you've done that for 2022 and 2023. You're like right there on your predictions from January. So obviously like not necessarily ask for numbers, but just what are the plans for 2024 this year? What are you looking at?
30 million. I was 2.5% off average of the last 2 years. So I was 4% off one year, and I was like a little bit less percent off. So over the 2 years, I was 2.5% off over 2 years. So I'm saying 30 million. I think it's doable for us.
God, that's the whole the singular ordinating principle for 2024. Just that so yeah, that's big growth.
It doesn't look that easy in January usually. Like you say that number in November, December. I have a habit of liking to get that number out before the year end. So I'll say in November, this is what I want to do next year. By January, I'm thinking to myself, oh shit, what did I do? Maybe we should pull it back a little bit. Maybe we should like be more reasonable. But I keep my mouth shut because doubt will taint the team, and then they will say to themselves, we can't do this. He doesn't trust us. So I keep my mouth shut like I did last year. There was times in the spring and the summer when I was looking at the numbers, because our number this year was like, 300 and something percent more than we did the year before. There was times in the spring and the summer when I was like, oh my gosh, we are not even going to get halfway there. But we were 2.5% away. So
crazy.
I think I've learned mentally that people can do more than they think they can do. So if you put that number out there, they're like, okay, well, that's what we have to do. We have to get there, and they'll push themselves a little harder to do it.
Have you heard of the concept of hysterical strength?
No, but is that like
it's
somebody who's a woman sees her baby under the car and she picks the car up and throws it across the street?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Like you're actually capable of a lot more than you think you're capable of, basically. Like not even a little bit, but like a lot more. So that's the whole concept. Yeah, hysterical. You literally explained it there in one sentence. But yeah, well, yeah, I'm excited to see it play out. Excited to be a part of it and see the massive growth like like this year. I'm sure that the clairvoyance will continue, and I'd say you'll have a habit of being like right on the money with that, figuratively and literally. But yeah, Johnny, where can people find everything? I suppose like you're with the brand, with yourself, if they wanted to follow along the journey on Twitter or elsewhere. Where can people find your stuff for the brands and for yourself?
I'm mostly on Twitter, John Hickey, 1970, something like that.
Yes, 1970, I think.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time on Twitter. I like to give back to Twitter, but it's hard because most people are better at marketing than I am. So mostly I'm just taking. But I give back when I can. When I think I have a good idea, I always put it forth.
You definitely do, yeah. So John Hickey, 1970 on Twitter, perfectyt.com for the brand. And yeah, John, thanks very much for coming on, man. Really, really do appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.